Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever Patreon exclusive podcast. That is a podcast called VillainZ. I am your host, the Rexecutioner, also known as Tonysaurus Rex. That's my villain name, by the way. Alongside my loving wife, Rebecca. Once again, if you heard the latest episode of Everything But the Podcast, my main podcast that's released for free every week, then you heard Rebecca on that. I decided to bring her on for this show as well. It's going to be a show where oh my goodness. It's going to be a show where we explore villains from different categories. I think it's going to be interesting because we have 4 different categories that Rebecca can choose from. She's going to choose it from a category, and then she's going to choose a letter between A and Z. That's going to dictate the first villain. Because I think I changed it. Originally, we were only going to do one villain per episode, but I decided to change it up. So on this first episode, she'll pick a category, then she'll pick a letter from A to Z. That will dictate what villain we talk about. We'll talk a little bit about the villain. I'll tell her their backstory, their strengths and weaknesses, stuff like that. And then she will pick a second villain, which will have to be from a different category. It can't be from the same category. We'll do the same thing, a letter between A and Z. We will discuss their origin story, their background, and we will also rate both villains on how evil we think they are on like an evil rating. And then at the end, we will do what we call like a villain battle, where we decide which of the 2 villains we think would win in a fight against each other. So that's what this show is going to be about. If you enjoy this show on Patreon, I may perhaps do a Heroes show in the future, which would be the same thing, but it'd just be Heroes. I don't know why I chose to spell it with a Z. I just wanted it to look different. So I spelled it with a capital Z. But without further ado, let's jump into this first epic episode of VillainZ. Oh, yeah, also, I called myself the Rexecutioner, but I couldn't come up with anything for you, so I couldn't figure it out. But the categories we got, the one other thing I need to note before we go into the categories is that once we've done a letter from a certain category, I will cross that off so that we cannot use that letter again. So until all the letters from each category are done, like all the villains, and then we'll start a new season, so to speak, which will have new villains under the same categories. Now, I should note that Marvel, which is one of the categories, there are 4 different letters that do not have any Marvel villains under those names. So those ones we'll have to skip over, but we can still do a villain from a different category. Marvel's the only one that doesn't have 4 characters under certain letters. So the categories are Marvel, obviously, which I just mentioned, DC, we've got movies and TV, and we've got video games. The other thing I should also note is I don't even know all these characters. I threw in some obscure ones. So it'll be interesting on the ones where neither of us know the character, because it'll be like we're reading about a character for the first time. And some of these like the TV shows and movies, some of this stuff I've never even seen at all. So it may inspire us to check out the movie or the TV show of what these villains are on. But I'll go ahead and let you pick the first category.
Marvel.
Alright, so Rebecca picks Marvel. And we've got a letter between A and Z. The only ones you cannot do are Q, X, Y, and O. G. Oh, you picked a big one on the first episode. G is Galactus, which is a huge Marvel villain. I don't know if you know anything about Galactus. You've probably seen him in some of the games I've played. Alright, Rebecca picked Galactus as the first character. Galactus, why I say that Galactus is big is because he's kind of like a god, because he's like massive. Galactus is a consumer of worlds and destroyer of planets. He roams the cosmos with one goal in mind. And that goal is basically consuming planets.
Wow.
I thought there would have been more backstory to that. Hang on. I know there's more of a backstory than this Marvel. Here we go. Here's a better one. His real name is actually Galen, and his occupation is Planet Destroyer. He's known throughout the universe, including Earth. It says he has no known relatives, but he's also spoken figuratively of eternity and death as his relations. His first appearance was actually in Fantastic Four number 48. So the first appearance in Galactus was in a Fantastic Four comic. Here's his history. We got a long history here. So Galactus is the sole survivor of the universe that existed prior to the creation of the current universe. Originally, Galactus was a humanoid named Galen, who was born on the planet Ta, a paradise-like world whose civilization is said to have been the most advanced of any of the known universes of that time. However, this universe was in its final stages of collapse. Originally, this universe had been a cosmic egg, or a primal sphere of disorganized, dense, compact primordial matter. The sphere underwent a big bang, an explosion that hurled the matter outwards, which much of it eventually condensed into stars and planets. This universe expanded in size for billions of years and then contracted over the following billions of years. All the matter of that universe was plunging toward a central point where a central point where it was collapsing into a new cosmic egg. Ta's civilization was one of the last still in existence. Lethal radiation caused by the death of this universe was wiping out life on nearby planets. Galen, which is Galactus who he originally was, if you remember, was a space explorer, and he was dispatched to travel through the cosmos to find a means of saving Ta, but he found none. The radiation then killed off all but a tiny fraction of the population of Ta. Knowing their deaths were inevitable, Galen proposed to the remaining survivors that they die gloriously by traveling in a starship straight into the cosmic egg. As the starship approached its destination, radiation killed all the passengers except Galen, who strangely found himself filled with new energy. The sentience of the dying universe contained within the cosmic egg prevented Galen and his starship from being destroyed by the egg's tremendous gravitational forces and heat. In parentheses, it says, presumably this was a previous incarnation of eternity, the embodiment of the life forces of the current universe. So that's another character. The dying universe's sentience contacted Galen, telling him that they both would die, but that both would be reborn, and that Galen would thus become Galactus, Ravager of Worlds. So basically, he traveled into the cosmic egg type thing that they were talking about. Everybody died, but then because it was a dying universe, everybody was going to die. And I guess the dying universe itself had some kind of life force because it told him that they were going to be reborn, so then he turned into Galactus. The cosmic egg absorbed Galen into himself. There is no way of determining how much time passed through. There is no way of determining how much time passed between the death of that universe and the creation of the current one. But finally, the cosmic egg underwent another Big Bang, thus creating the current universe, which I guess would be the current Marvel universe. Eternity and death, the ethereal embodiments of the new universe, were created in this Big Bang, and the being that had been Galen was simultaneously hurled outward in his recreated starship. It is because all three were created simultaneously that Galactus refers to eternity and death as his siblings. Okay, so they're not actually his siblings, but they were all created from the supposed Big Bang that happened, I guess, is what it's saying. Galactus then drifted his starship for eons as life began to come into existence in the universe, including the races that would give rise to the elders of the universe. Eventually, Galactus' starship was sighted by one of the Watchers, an ancient race of beings who had undertaken to observe the events of the universe. The Watcher, who was not Uatu, the Watcher who observes Earth, drew the starship down to his planet to study it. There he learned that the being within it had vast growing power and would eventually have to consume worlds to satiate his hunger for energy. So because his energy is ever growing, that's why he has to devour whole worlds. It's like a never-ending process. It's kind of sad when you think about it. Realizing the danger that Galactus posed to the cosmos, this Watcher considered destroying the being before he harnessed his full power, but instead decided to abide by the Watcher's oath of non-interference and let Galactus depart in his starship. Galactus learned how to use his vast power and created a suit of armor to help him regulate it. He then transformed the starship into a kind of incubation chamber where Galactus spent centuries evolving into his current form, which would be that giant form. Finally, the incubation ship drifted into orbit around the inhabited planet Archaeopia. The Archaeopians themselves did not disturb the strange ship, but years later a marauding space fleet nearing Archaeopia and thinking Galactus' ship to be a weapon attacked it. Galactus, his incubation finished, emerged, destroyed the fleet, and then hungering for energy consumed the biospheric energy of Archaeopia. A small fleet of Archaeopian ships managed to escape, but all life on the planet was destroyed. It also says the Archaeopian race would later be fully exterminated by the living planet Ego, which I think it was just in that Lego Marvel Superheroes 2 game I was just playing. And I was like, what is that thing? So that's a little bit, I'm not going to read all of this because this goes on for forever. Let's see if we can find more about his first encounter with Fantastic Four. Okay, it does say, at one point Galactus threatened to destroy the planet Zenla, the home of a civilized race. Oh my goodness, a home of a civilized race. One of that world's inhabitants, Norin Rad, persuaded Galactus to spare the planet by volunteering to become his herald and searched out uninhabited worlds for him to consume. So at that point, that's when that character Norin Rad from that planet that he convinced Galactus to spare, Galactus turned him into the Silver Surfer. So that's who the Silver Surfer is. If you didn't know that. Hopefully people don't think this is boring right now because I'm just giving facts about people. It says eventually Galactus grew determined to consume the energy-rich planet Earth, and the Surfer rebelled as a result. And Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four thwarted Galactus by threatening to use an alien device called the Ultimate Nullifier on him, a weapon that could kill even Galactus. Galactus was forced to vow to spare Earth, and he punished the Surfer by erecting an energy barrier that prevented the Surfer from leaving Earth. Despite his pledge to Richards that he would never return, Galactus returned several times to Earth to consume it, but was always narrowly thwarted. Meanwhile, he consumed numerous inhabited worlds throughout the known universe to sate his hunger, and was feared as a menace to all known star-faring races. Galactus also took on a succession of new heralds. During his last attempt to destroy Earth, Galactus had gone so long without feeding that his energies were severely waning, and a large number of Earth's superhuman defenders actually succeeded in defeating him in battle, because he hadn't fed in too long of a time. Galactus lay dying from lack of energy, but Reed Richards, who was the one that defeated him the first time from Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic, actually saved Galactus' life. The grateful Galactus pledged his friendship to Richards and sincerely gave his word never to attack Earth again. Galactus has steadfastly abided by this oath ever since. During this visit to Earth, Galactus recruited his newest herald, Nova. So he continues to prey upon other worlds, but because of Reed Richards saving his life, he decided to leave Earth alone. His appetite became such that he would only eat on planets of sentient life. And he created a new herald. So he's created a lot of heralds. So at some point in time, Galactus actually dies. Let's see what this says. He created a new herald, Redshift, to help him succeed in eating planets of sentient life. He approached Earth once more and had to be driven off by a large contingent of Earth's superheroes, and Redshift was defeated. Finally, he was repulsed by the Silver Surfer, who agreed once more to become Galactus' herald and to search for planets, this time of sentient life, to consume. Almost immediately, the Silver Surfer led Galactus to the homeworld of the Shi'ar Empire, perhaps the most technologically advanced in the known universe, and hopes they would have the forces to repulse the planet Devourer. The Shi'ar quickly joined with other races and several of Earth's superheroes to battle Galactus. During the conflict, the Silver Surfer managed to turn Galactus' own energy-siphoning machines on Galactus himself, fatally weakening him. Galactus actually died in this moment, warning that the madness which had consumed him was a precursor to another great horror. As he passed away, Galactus was converted to energy by his own planet-destroying machines. As Reed Richards noted, the energy would radiate forever outward, so he could never again reform. Galactus' death allowed the being known as Abraxas to emerge from the concept of eternity that embodies destruction. Well, we're not going to talk about Abraxas because that's a whole nother character. So now we'll get into some of Galactus' stats. He has a height of 28 feet 9 inches and weighs about 18.2 tons. I told you he's massive. His unusual features. Galactus' height diminishes by as much as 10.9 feet when he is greatly in need of life-giving energy, so he shrinks. Although Galactus is usually represented in humanoid form, each sentient being perceives him having a form resembling his own. Hence, humanoids see Galactus in humanoid form, while a Skrull, for example, will perceive Galactus as resembling a Skrull. So you see him as in your own form then, basically. Strength level. At full power, Galactus possesses class 100 strength, enabling him to lift well over 100 tons. And he can use his vast power to increase his strength immeasurably beyond that. However, Galactus invariably relies on his energy powers in combat rather than his physical strength. His known superhuman powers. Galactus possesses cosmic power beyond the abilities of human beings to measure. He's able to use the vast energies within him for an incalculable number of effects. Some of his most rudimentary abilities, the molecular restructuring or conversion of matter, the projection of energy with enormous concussive force, the teleportation of objects across space or even time, and the erection of invincible energy screens and force fields. Even his heralds, whom he has endowed with a small fraction of his ever-renewing power, are able to manipulate matter and energy in ways far beyond human comprehension. He also wears a full bodysuit of armor constructed from an unknown extraterrestrial metal that permits him to regulate and control his personal energy. If he were to remove the armor, the vast cosmic energies that empower him would run rampant with the potential to turn him into a small sun. So he has to wear the armor. He also requires unknown energies obtainable only from a certain type of planet in order to sustain his life. The suitable type of planet need not be one where life is present, but it must have the potential to support life. Although he is able to extract and absorb this energy himself, he generally employs a complicated array of equipment to perform the conversion process for him. The equipment is not only more efficient than he is, but also enables him to avoid the needless expenditure of energy involved in the process. Sometimes he drains the energies he needs from a planet while still leaving it barely habitable. Was that the right word? Habitable? habitable. Other times he destroys all life and water on the planet in the process, leaving its surface devastated and barren. Most often his feeding process destroys the planet, reducing it to space rubble. When Galactus was newly born in his current form, the energy of a medium-sized Earth-like planet was enough to sustain him for over a century. Now, for unknown reasons, he needs to feed about once a month, and his body totally converts the energy he absorbs for its life functions and bodily activities without any waste products. He is a telepathic, able to scan the thoughts of any mind he has yet encountered, no matter how alien or advanced it was, so he can read everybody's thought. Weapons, Galactus often employs a robot called the Punisher, how ironic,
Yeah.
which possesses great superhumanoid strength to battle adversaries whose power levels do not rival his own. And he's capable of space travel via his own power, but he usually uses his spaceship. So those were some of his strengths. Hopefully we'll remember those by the time we do the second character. So now you gotta pick a character from a different category. Do you remember what the categories were?
Movies and TV.
Alright, movies and TV. I feel like no matter who you pick, going up against Galactus, it's like a lost cause. Or, this is someone I don't know. Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones. So we're gonna see who Ramsay Bolton is. Bolton. Yeah, I don't know why we had never watched Game of Thrones really, but we need to look into it. Here we go. His name was Ramsay. Ramsay Bolton. There he is. Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones, formerly known as Ramsay Snow and sometimes called the Bastard of Bolton. I hope I haven't said that word, but whatever. Ramsay Bolton is one of the main antagonists in A Song of Ice and Fire novels as well as Game of Thrones. It says he served, well, I don't care about what seasons he's in. Ramsay is widely regarded as being one of the most evil and repulsive villains in this series, who some consider to be worse than King Joffrey Baratheon. His character first appears during the second book, imprisoned by Bran Stark and freed by Theon Greyjoy. However, he was cut from the second season. Well, I don't care about that. What the heck is his biography? Here's his personality. Throughout both incarnations, Ramsay is a monstrous, savage, psychotic, brutal, and ruthless sadist who casually commits disgusting, horrific acts such as rape and torture for his own amusement, with no regard for anyone, and thus ends up angering his father, Roose, for his reckless killing of people and lack of political tact. He considers himself a true Bolton despite his birth and is highly resentful of his baseborn status, referring to himself proudly as the trueborn scion of the Dreadfort and violently correcting those who refer to him otherwise. Even though he is not a true Bolton, Ramsay follows many of their traditions and customs, more specifically their insignia of flaying men alive and wearing their skin as coats. My goodness, he sounds like frickin' Leatherface. Typical of a psychopath, Ramsay is outwardly unapologetic and completely remorseless to the countless men and women he tortures and kills. Ramsay's hobbies and many enjoyments are sadistic to the extreme, and who revels in the violence, misery, and death he causes, and also treats the prospect of hunting, killing, and torturing innocent people as sport. His idea of a game generally include having young women stripped naked, then released into the Bolton Forest before hunting them with a pack of feral dogs. Well, it ain't hard to figure out where this guy is on the frickin' evil category. My goodness. He also gives quick deaths to women who give him good sport, and in parentheses says after raping them first. So this guy's a complete creep. Then flays their corpses and names his dogs after the women he enjoys killing most to honor them. The women who do not give him good sport, however, are raped and then flayed alive, and the skins of his kills are brought back with him to the Dreadfort as gruesome trophies, and the flayed bodies of the women are fed to his dogs. Ramsay has no care over this, however, and is simply a game to him. While Ramsay can be cunning and a good manipulator, he is also not good at intricate politics and does not understand the risks of the consequences of his wild actions. I'm trying to see if it doesn't really say his strengths and appearances, like his strengths and weaknesses. It says he's a walking embodiment of cruelty and sadism and the embodiment of pure evil. He rivals monsters such as other characters for the title of Worst of the Worst. He enjoys torturing people in the worst possible ways, such as flaying them alive and hunting people, and is a serial killer and a serial rapist who delights how much pain he brings to others. We don't really have a stat thing on him because he's from TV and movie shows, but where would you play him on, like, the evil scale? Yeah, that's what we didn't do. We didn't do Galactus on the evil scale yet. Yeah, I'm gonna give him a 10 because that's like disgusting. Galactus, I'm actually gonna put lower than that on the evil because he's evil to a certain extent because he consumes life, but that's because he can't help it. That's how he lives.
Yeah.
So I kind of lower Galactus on the evil scale to like a 7.
That's what I was thinking.
But in terms of an all-out battle, sorry, Ramsey or whatever the crap your name is, you're dead. Galactus owns you. Yeah. There's like nothing that Ramsey could do against Galactus. I mean, it also said that even though Galactus doesn't usually rely on his strength, if he did rely on his strength, he has the strength to be able to lift 100 tons.
Wow.
Well, honestly, an advantage that the Ramsey guy could have over Galactus is that Galactus, being as big as he is and being the sentient being he is, probably wouldn't even notice. Because I've read comics with Galactus where they couldn't even get his attention when they were trying to, because they're basically like gnats to Galactus. Like, you're so tiny on his scale. So, and your real way of stopping him, I guess, would be whenever he gets those energy weapons to try and consume the world. If you destroy those, then you're probably going to be able to stop Galactus. But in terms of an actual fight, if Galactus did notice his presence, he ain't surviving. Galactus could just look at you and breathe on you, and you probably could fly away to your death. So at the end of this episode, Galactus wins that battle for sure over, what did I say his name was? Ramsey Bolton. Ramsey Bolton is definitely the more evil of the two, in my opinion, because it does say that Galactus had his life saved by Reed, and he considered Reed Richards, which is Mr. Fantastic, a friend, so he was kind of less evil for a while. Yeah. And he really only consumes, like I said, the energy because that's like, and also originally Galactus was not Galactus, he was a normal humanoid being named Galen, but I gotta give him at least a 7, because I think in the twist of the Silver Surfer story, whenever he creates that, Norrin, I think that's what his name was, Norrin something, into Silver Surfer, he like erases his memory so that he doesn't remember why he's Silver Surfer. So when he eventually finds out what happened, then he turns on Galactus, and that's why he ends up joining the heroes. So that's it. So Galactus is evil on that extent because he like wipes his whole memory. But at the same extent, it's not fully evil because the guy had joined to become he agreed to become his herald. He might not have agreed to become the Silver Surfer, but he did agree to become Galactus' herald, so his people would be saved. Yeah, I know a lot more about Galactus than I do Ramsey Bolton, because I fought Galactus in plenty of video games. And I've read about him in comics. So these episodes, I guess, are going to be a little bit shorter. Maybe some will be longer, some will be shorter. But that's going to conclude the first episode of Villains. It wasn't really a fight. Yeah. It was more of a description. Oh my goodness. It was more of a description of backstories. And it was hard to say what kind of stats the one guy would have, other than he's just evil and he likes to rape and murder people. Galactus. What gives me a bullet if you something? I've already said that. I think I did say that. It doesn't really say. I think he's the son of somebody, I'm pretty sure, because it says he's often unaware, or he doesn't understand the risks and the consequences of his actions. Bruce Bolton is annoyed by his behavior and tries to encourage him to keep the North a quiet and peaceful land. So whoever Bruce Bolton is must be... We never watched the show, so it's kind of hard to... But yeah, easily to say, if this was an all-out battle, what the heck, Ramsey is snuffed. He's snuffed out by Galactus in, like, not even a second. Even if Galactus wanted to, he could just use his pinky and just smash the guy into nothing. Still on him. Because it's like, Ramsey Bolton is evil, but he doesn't have powers, so he's not going to be able to fight Galactus. The only advantage he would have over to Galactus is if he can outsmart the situation, or if he can enlist the help of anybody. But, with as disgusting of a human being he is, I'm pretty sure nobody's coming to his aid. Yeah. Nobody that could do anything against Galactus anyway. Yeah. So, and even if they did, it's still Galactus we're talking about. Yeah. So, that's going to do it for the first episode of Villains, the very first episode or the very first Patreon exclusive podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. I want to continue on with it. Let me know on Patreon if you do enjoy it, or if you'd like to see, like, maybe the Heroes one, where you can talk about different heroes. So we're going to cross off the letter G from Marvel and the letter R from movies and TV. So that the next time we can only go through the letters we haven't used already. And we will see what we get on the next episode. And that'll do it for this episode. Until next time, everybody, when villains unite, heroes die of fright. That's my official sign off.
Bye.